Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to the motherland of Scotland once again, and we're going to return to a brewery as well that has featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last couple of years, a few different styles, but I think it is most definitely fair to say that this brewery is best known for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs. Now, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is one of their latest releases through Systembolaget here in Sweden. I can't remember if I've tried this one because we have had a few beers from this brewery on tap in the pub I work in over the last little while, but regardless, as I say, this is a style that I know these guys can do very well. So very much looking forward to this one. It's our first review from this brewery in quite a wee while. Hopefully it's another good one. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Glasgow and we're going to have a look at another beer from Overtone Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called On Cloud 9. It comes in at 8.5% ABV, and this one is another New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, they're describing this one as a double oak cream IPA, and this beer was released as part of the Teferi assortment through Systembolaget in early October of 2022. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Overtone Brewing before, and we will definitely be adding more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has that geography-based tagging system, and you can check out the playlists of beers from different countries. You will find this one in the Scottish list, and as always, the support that you guys give the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Overtone Brewing once again then. So Overtone Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Glasgow, Yoker to be precise, and the company was founded back in 2017 by Bo Wang, who is originally from Beijing in China. So he had been a home brewer for a number of years before he founded the brewery, and apparently his beers were, quite well received, and that was what inspired him to go professional. But the name Overtone is taken from Bo Wei's love of techno music, and that's why you get these kind of nice techno style roundels on the Overtone cans. A very distinctive style of artwork, of course. But Bo Wei hired Dan Miller, who's from New Hampshire in New England in the northeast of the US, to come in as his head brewer. And he previously worked as a head chef, but also as a brewer in England, New York, and also in Scotland for 6 Degrees North, who are a very good kind of Belgian style brewery, and one that I do recommend you check out. But also involved in the brewery is Martin Conahan, who worked in the craft beer scene in New Zealand for a good while. He takes part in the brewing and also does a few other things as well. And they've got Charlie too. So yeah, a growing brewing team at Overtone Brewing. But the brewery itself can be found in the New Albion Industrial Estate in Yoker near Renfrew and Clydebank. That's about where my grandparents were from. But they began brewing operations there back in 2018. So the brewery don't have a fixed range of beers, and they're always brewing different things, but there are favourites that do appear again every so often. But as of October 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 90 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. Like I said, their main focus is the New England Hazy IPA category. They were the first brewery in Scotland really to focus on this particular style bracket, if memory serves me correctly. But yeah, you will get other styles from them too. We've had some really nice West Coast IPAs. They do some interesting Imperial Stouts, and they have got a few sour beers as well. So I think I do need to try a couple of their sour beers at some point in the near future, because that's something I haven't touched upon on the channel as of yet. But yeah, that's everything you really need to know about Overtone for the moment. Again, if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery websites. You can follow their social media to keep up to date with the latest goings on. And when it comes to learning more about the beer, you can check out the Untappd page or some of my older reviews. I reviewed some of their very early beers. One that really sticks in mind for me was the Rwandan Coffee IPA, and that was beautifully done. But this brewery really started to get on the hype train when their beers went down into England, and then from there they've just kind of exploded. So yeah, that's it about Overtone. Let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer itself. So the hops in this one are Galaxy from Australia, Nelson Sauvin from New Zealand, and Citra from the US. It also contains the cryo version of Citra as well. But yeah, we know all of these hops quite well. Galaxy, as I said, Australian, 14% alpha acid, gives you a really big pungent passion fruity note with a good bit of mango and pineapple. Citra, 14% American, gives you that big juicy mango, but also quite a bit of grapefruit as well. And then in the New England IPA, it can sometimes show you a sort of lemon limey character. And then Nelson Sauvin, our favourite from New Zealand, about 16% alpha acid. It gives you that big, white, green, grapey, almost gooseberry like note. So yeah, nice combination of hops in this one. A classic mix that we've probably had a few times, come to think of it. But yeah, it says on the back here, this double IPA is brewed with an unruly amount of oats and lactose to create a velvety smooth and creamy IPA. Passion fruit, sweet pineapple and peach flavours with some grape, some white grape and fresh gooseberry notes. So yeah, we kind of know this from the hops that are in there. But you can see plain silver top on this one. I'll just let you have a wee look at the artwork again before we open up. You can see this one, it does have that sort of round all from Overtone. You can see, let me just turn it around this way. There you can see Overtone on Cloud 9. It looks pretty good. 440ml can. I believe this one cost 65 Swedish kroner. So that's about €6.50, probably somewhere in the region of like £5.75 sterling. And I guess it's going to be, what, in the region of about $7.25, maybe something like that, for those of you watching in the US. Yeah, let's get this guy out. We'll get on with the tasting then. An 8.5% oat cream double IPA, or oat cream hazy imperial New England, whatever we're going to call this thing. But yeah, knowing Overtone, it will probably be quite good. Let's get this guy out into the glass and see what we have. So I think that's about 75% of the beer, 3/4 in the glass. But that is enough for us to have a look at for the moment. So before the head disappears, you can see that this beer is poured with about a bit over a half, or maybe 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head. But yeah, there are one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head, which is incidentally just fading away to be a nice kind of thin foamy layer. But yeah, as you can see, it's poured as you would expect from one of these kind of modern hazy New England IPAs. Now, colour-wise, I would say this one is kind of like a mixed mango pineapple juice, something like that. It's on the lighter side of the yellow. So remember, I always like comparing New England IPAs to different fruit juices because that's just what they remind me of. But remember, when it comes to New England IPAs, or any kind of beer style actually, the colour of the beer is determined by the type of malts that you use. For the most part, that goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. The length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aged that you do or any adjuncts that you put in will affect it too, but in the case of New England IPAs, or pretty much any kind of IPA other than fruit ones, we don't really have to care about that. But the level of haze in this one is pretty decent. It's not the soupiest and gloopiest of New England IPAs I've come across, and I think we have seen ones that have been a bit, soupier than this from Overtone themselves. But as I say, that depends on the yeast, the oat content and the wheat content. There's not a rule about, as you go up the alcohol scale, you'll have more oats, more wheat, and thus you'll have a bigger haze to it. But yeah, this one is getting toward that soupy, gloopy end of the spectrum. When they're describing it as an oat cream New England IPA, that's not surprising, but you can see pretty damn opaque, this one. So yeah, let's have a look at the aroma of this beer and see how we get on. I don't think we need to say anything else about the appearance, so let's go for it. Yeah, that smells pretty nice, I have to say. Yeah, straight away with this one then, I actually find that it's quite pungent. The green component jumps out of the glass at me a little bit, but yeah, you can certainly smell that it's a big creamy thing, this, and the fruity notes in this are really quite just familiar, because we know all three of the hops in this one quite well, I have to say. Yeah, it does smell very nice, and it's good. It's always nice to get a Scottish beer to review on the channel for you, because there's not that many of them make it over here to Sweden, of course. Hopefully more over the next little while. But yeah, this is a very, very nice smelling beer, and you can certainly smell a lot. You can smell the just the thickness of it for sure. So yeah, let's try and break this down for you and describe it a wee bit more in depth. So the backbone of this beer, you've got a little bit of that fresh white bready bread crust forming the backbone of the beer. You can absolutely smell a little, quite a dense white bread to this one, and I think there is a bit of wheat malt in this one. I would be surprised if there wasn't, but you can smell the sort of the barley malt and the wheat malt just giving you that dense white bready character in this one. As I say, like a fresh hedgehog roll, but at the back of the nose you get a little bit of at the back of the nose you get a little bit of a kind of wheaty bitiness coming out of the beer as well, which I think is quite nice. But yeah, on top of that, you've got lovely creamy oaty characteristics coming out of the beer. And yeah, the thing with this one is you can smell that it's still quite fresh because you are getting some of the oaty creaminess, but you can smell that the oats are starting to just give you that little bit of dryness. And as I've always said, for me, the oats in a New England IPA are a very good indicator of how old your beer is. You know, the younger it is, the more kind of creamy they're going to come across as being. But then the older the beer gets, you're going to get a little bit more dryness out of it, and you can smell a little bit of that in this one too. But the oats are actually giving you a little touch of sweetness in the beer as well. I do get little hints of that Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type thing in this one. But yeah, the way that goes together, as I said, is pretty nice. So on the hoppy side of things then, I think we've said everything we need to about the malt base, incidentally. On the hoppy side of things, like I said, the green component in this beer is quite, it really is quite pungent actually. And as I've told you many a time, when it comes to hopping your beers, there's three different kinds of hoppings. Early edition hops within the first hour of the wort boil, they are responsible mainly for providing bitterness. Late edition hopping gives you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma. That's in the last half hour of the wort boil usually. And then dry hopping after the wort boil is complete, that is all about the flavour and aroma. And that of course can be done at different intervals, or junctures should we say. But yeah, the green component of this one, I get a little tiny touch of earthiness with this one, but you can smell, I think you can smell like a sort of oiliness to the green component there, and I think that'll be down mainly to the cryo, but you get a nice deep floral aromatic note to this one, and you also get a little bit of grassiness there, but those are quite oily. When it comes to New England IPAs, they mainly rely on late edition and dry hopping. West Coast IPAs have both of those, but also the early edition hopping, which gives them their bigger bitterness. But yeah, with this one, it does have a little bit of that deeper floral character to it, but the fruity note in this beer is very familiar. Yeah, I do like how this goes together actually. So the fruity note is great. Yeah, I would say that this one, it is quite citra leaning. It really is quite citra leaning, this one. So for me, the most dominant fruity character in this beer is a big kind of smooth, juicy mango. But yeah, you have got a little bit of apricot in there and a bit of a juicier pineapple. And of course, this is going to be, I think it's mainly the citra because of the presence of the cryo. But behind that, there is a good little bit of passion fruit. There is a good little bit of passion fruit in there, a little bit of grapefruit, but not a lot to be honest with you. And of course that's going to be contributed to by the Galaxy as well, but you can smell that nice big oily gooseberry sort of thing from the Nelson Sauvin in there. You've got that big oily gooseberry, white green grapey element to it, which I really like. So yeah, it gets a big thumbs up from me once again. Yeah. So yeah, the way that goes together is really nice. It smells like a very kind of smooth, creamy New England IPA, this one, but the green component does have a bit of depth to it. But yeah, definitely mango's dominating, a little bit of passion fruit in there, some of the juicy apricot, and maybe a little bit of papaya actually as well. You do get a wee touch of that. And then yeah, a bit of pineapple and the kind of Nelson Sauvin notes that you would expect, the green, white grape and gooseberry. So yeah, smells very, very nice, this one. So let's get this guy out, the rest of it out, and we'll actually taste the thing. So as I always say, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, but this should be pretty good. So this one is what's it called? It's on Cloud 9. I was going to say Cloud 9. Uh, so yeah, it's on Cloud 9, an 8.5% double oat cream IPA from from Overtone Brewing Company in Glasgow, back in the motherland of Scotland. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's nice. Interestingly, first thing that comes to mind, it does have a little touch of a wheaty zip to it at the back of the palate. Yeah. I really can't remember whether I've had this one in Bishop's Arms of Gustav Alstor. We regularly get Overtone beers, and yeah, we regularly get Overtone beers, but I really can't remember if we've had this one. I think we might have, but yeah. But this is again very nice. But I will say for an 8.5%er, that's dangerously drinkable. That is dangerously drinkable. Yeah, you can taste this one. You can taste it's quite fresh as well, because you can still get a little bit of the almost kind of dusty character in the green component from the dry hopping. Yeah, that is pretty good. So, what I'm guessing with this one is probably citrus being used as the hop during the wort boil, maybe the cryo citrus being used for that. But the other hops I think will be pellets and put in later on. So yeah, you can definitely just taste a little bit of that dustiness with this beer. But yeah, let's break it down and describe it a wee bit more for you in depth. So, this beer, as I've said to you, there's 6 different ways a New England IPA can grow. Yeasty and farmhousey, rye and grainy, barley malt and bready, wheaty and bitey, oaty, creamy, or they can be a bit sweeter. This one really is leaning to more towards the kind of oaty, creamy side of things, but there is a bit of wheaty, bitey character in there as well. But let's focus on that middle third of the palate. You've got a nice little bit of that kind of bread crusty character there forming the backbone. There's a little bit of that almost kind of fresh, flowery type note to it, which I do enjoy. You do get that little bit of bread crust in the base, but then on top of that you can feel a little bit of the kind of dense white bread. There's a wee touch of kind of Jacob's cream cracker in there, not a lot, right enough, but then yeah, on top of the white bread you can, with the white bread you can feel the wheat is kind of densifying that a little bit, but yeah. But on top of that, you've got a nice big oaty, creamy character with this one. It's interesting because it said this beer contains lactose, and I don't, how do you say it? I don't get so much of that. I'm just trying to see if it comes out a little bit more in the aftertaste, but yeah, because sometimes, yeah, usually you can just get a little touch. I think you get a little touch of taste from lactose sugar. Yeah, you can take maybe toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you can feel a little bit of the smoothness and a wee bit of that almost very slightly vanilla-y type flavour that lactose can give you. So yeah, you can get a little bit of the lactose just at the front of that. At the front of that middle third of your tongue. But yeah, it's good. But like I say, on top of the kind of more dense white bready layer, you can get all the oaty notes out of this one. What's interesting about this beer is that it doesn't have too big a sweet component. And when you start to go above that 8%, 8.5% mark, I always think when New England IPAs, you maybe need a little touch of sweetness in there just to balance the beer out. Not always the case though. I've noticed in recent times that they're getting better at kind of masking the alcohol, because obviously West Coast IPAs would use some biscuit malt or some, crystal or whatever, the US two rows, where they would always have something that was a bit brown sugar in there. But New England IPAs, they are getting a bit better at kind of covering the alcohol in these beers for sure. But yeah, you can feel in the middle of your palate, you've got that lovely, big, smooth, kind of dense and creamy oaty character. And as you go toward the edges of the palate, it does give you a little bit of dryness. It does give you a little bit of that oaty dryness. And again, that's an indicator of the freshness of the beer. But the lactose really smoothens this one out, actually, which is kind of interesting. In the dead centre of your palate, you will detect a little hint of a Werther's Original note and a wee bit of that McVitie's Digestive biscuity character. But yeah, it's not overly, it's not madly, it's not overly present, if you like. It's more kind of smooth beer, this one, rather than being too sweet. But the sweetness does build a little touch as you go into the aftertaste. So yeah, the way that goes together is really nice. The malt base gets a thumbs up from me. I think we can go on to the back third of the palate now. Brain's getting tired today, yeah. Brain farts. So, border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of bready build up there. Then the base of the back third of the palate is a little bit more kind of bread crusty. On top of that, you've got a little bit more of the white bread in there. You can feel that layer is a little bit taller and you get a wee touch more dryness out of the white bread. Remember, the more dry, kind of bittery flavours come out further back on the palate. Above that, you start to get the wheat and you can feel the density of the wheat and a little bit of the, you get a bit of the density of the wheat and also a good little bit of wheaty bitiness in there. But then on top of that, you do start to get some of the more yeasty characteristics out of this beer. And for me, the yeasty layer is a little bit, actually quite a dense yeasty layer, but it is again just like another kind of bready layer, but a little bit of a slightly sweeter bread, maybe a little touch of it has got a wee tiny touch of that kind of farmhousey sort of vibe to it. But yeah, it's just another bready layer on top of the kind of wheat and the sort of bitey wheaty character there. But yeah, the back third of the palate, the flavour is definitely taller. Then as you come further forward, it just condenses together actually. So I do like how that goes together, to be honest with you. Let's move on to the hoppy side of this beer then. So green component first. Yeah, back corners of the palate, there's a little touch of earthiness in there, but as you move further forward, you do have that you do start to get the green component of this one quite well. And the further you go into the aftertaste, it actually dries up a little bit. This beer does give you a little touch of bitterness. So you can feel you've got that nice deep green component in there. And that's, again, I quite like how that goes together for sure. But yeah, you can feel there's a bit of that. There is almost a little touch of a kind of piney resinous note there, but as you move toward the front kind of corners of the palate, it's a little bit more sort of floral and aromatic. But then round the front curve of the palate, it's a bit lighter and grassy, and then a little bit more, it gives you a little bit more of a kind of oily character as well, and there's a wee bit of zestiness in there. The way that goes together, I think, is quite nice, and the beer, it does feel a little bit more bitter, but yeah, good little bit of green component to this one. And I do wonder if that's the cryo that gives you that little bit more depth, because all of these hops, if you use them as early edition hops, they are capable of giving you that big bitterness actually. So that's interesting. So I think that's all we really need to say about the green component, to be honest with you. Let's look at the fruitiness in that front third of the palate. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, a little bit of a bready build up there. Then the base of your front third of your palate is a little bit more kind of smooth and bready. You don't get so much of the oaty notes in there, to be honest with you. But then on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, this one, again, it is quite familiar. At the back of that front third of your palate, you're definitely getting the kind of pungent grapefruity notes, and I think that's going to come it'll come from both the Galaxy and from the Citra, to be honest with you. Yeah. So you do get a little bit of that pungent grapefruit as you come further forward. It mellows out and gives you a wee passion fruity note there, but then as you move forward from it, it's a big, big juicy mango, and then underneath that, it's got a little bit of a kind of, it has got a little bit of a kind of apricot-y note to it, and also a little bit of a juicy pineapple on top. But then as you move into the front half of the front third of your palate, then it's all about the Nelson Sauvin. It really is all about the Nelson Sauvin. But I would say, to be honest with you, the Nelson Sauvin takes a wee bit of time to come out. That white green grapey sort of note. It does really take a bit of while. You get a little touch of oiliness there at the very front tip of your tongue, and you know that's where I always find that Nelson Sauvin has that little bit of oiliness to it, and it works. But yeah, the further into the aftertaste you go, you get a little bit more of the pungent grapefruit and passion fruit coming out, but you also get the kind of lighter, more oily characteristics of the you also get the lighter, more kind of oily characteristics of the Nelson Sauvin coming out as well. So that, again, that's, for me, that's quite interesting. Yeah, the fruity side of this one has a few quirky things going on, and I do like that. Yeah, I think we can leave it at that for describing the flavour of this beer. To be honest with you, it's really nicely done, but it feels a bit different to what I've had from Overtone previously. And definitely not quite as lactosey as I thought it was going to be, or with the double oat cream. It does give you that big kind of creamy note, but it did say there was lactose in it, so that's kind of interesting. But yeah, just to round off the with the mouthfeel then. Mouthfeel wise, for me, this beer is kind of top end to mid body, bottom end to full body. The carbonation is very, very smooth. As we said, it does have quite a smooth and kind of creamy mouthfeel to it, this one. It does give you a little touch of dryness the further into the aftertaste you go. It does also feel very clean. We're very proud of our tap water in Scotland. And yeah, you definitely get that kind of Scottish cleanliness to it, in a sense. But yeah, when it comes to the bitterness of this beer, it's interesting because when you actually have the beer on your tongue, it feels a little bit more bitter, but it could just be the kind of dustiness from dry hopping. We do have to consider that. But I think this might be a little bit more. I think this could be about 40 IBUs, but if it was a standard 30, that wouldn't surprise me. I'll say that. Some of the depth of the green component of this one makes me think it's a little bit more bitter, probably down to the cryo. The malt base, as we said, is very, very smooth. This one beer doesn't have a big sweet component to it, as you can sometimes get from these slightly, when we're starting to get into the heavier side of the New England IPA spectrum, and the fruity side is very, very familiar to us. A little touch of oiliness, but then the soft, tropical, juicy notes. But I mean, overall, it is a very, very nice New England IPA, this one, and I wouldn't expect any less of Overtone. It's definitely up there with the standards that we've come to expect of this brewery. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. So yeah, this was the On Cloud 9 and 8.5% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, or Double Oat Cream, as they're labelling it at Overtone IPA. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Overtone Brewing as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the near future. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and see you guys very, very soon.